With that, I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole. Actually, just before I do that, I did want to extend our sympathies, our condolences to Epcor from the town of Canmore for the loss of 2 members of the Epcor family. It was bad, sad news. Vince particularly, who worked with us for so long, very, very highly regarded at the town. I didn't have a chance to know Kelly, but please extend our condolences to your friends and other co-workers. With that, I will call the meeting to order. And looking to the agenda, there's one addition to the agenda, an in-camera item, Three Sisters Area Structure Plan applications. Are there any other changes, additions to the agenda? Yes, if you'd been listening. In which case, I'll move the agenda be approved as presented or as amended. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We have 2 delegations with us tonight. The first is from the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. And, Councillor Krauser is going to introduce this delegation.
Thank you, Your Worship. I asked this delegation to come forward because I think that they have an interesting story to tell and an involvement with Canmore that I'm not sure that many people were aware of. The Hockey Alberta has been involved in Canmore for a number of years through their golf tournament and through their Hall of Fame induction, and they're going to talk about that. But as a hockey fan, and I know that there's a lot of us here in Canmore, I wasn't aware of it, and so I said, you know, if you want to engage Canmore more, which is the reason that I had been talking with Tim Lear, the executive director, I said, let's start by having a presentation to the council as to the activities that are carried on here, because there's quite a significant presence here in our community, and it has quite a significant economic benefit as well through their activities. So I was very glad that they were willing to come, and Mr. Lear is here with Mr. Coates and Mr. Barazan. I would ask them to take it away.
Take it away.
Take it away. All right. Thank you very much. And my name is Tim Lear, Executive Director of the Hockey Alberta Foundation, and have with me 2 gentlemen from our Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Committee, Mr. Perry Barazan and Mr. Al Coates. So, and they will be helping me out today. We just thought, you know, thanks Councillor Sean and Rob for having us and getting us on the agenda today. We certainly appreciate that. Take a few minutes here, have a few slides to walk through. In terms of an agenda, want to just highlight who we are as Hockey Alberta and the Hockey Alberta Foundation. We are one, but we are different as well. Hockey in Canmore, there's probably people in this room who know a little bit more about hockey within Canmore than I do, but just a few points there. Hockey Alberta in Canmore. As mentioned, we've been here for a few years with a variety of different programs, whether it be a hockey camp, our foundation, golf tournament, and more recently is the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Induction Gala. The last few slides is where we want to focus some time on community benefits, opportunity, and vision, and then moving forward, and I guess our ask, as we said, but have a conversation around that. Just a little bit about Hockey Alberta. Vision and mission is there, so Hockey for Life. In terms of a mission, basically we're here for the players, positive experiences, and Hockey for Life. So from the start as a player, let's work with minor hockey associations and other groups to make sure that player, regardless of the age of that player, male or female, let's make that experience a positive one and that opportunity. So then they choose which would be Hockey for Life. So become a coach, become a volunteer, become the all-star men's rec all-star player in their community, so which a few people are in this room maybe. Established in 1907, so 110 years young this year. Provincial sport organization and the governing body for amateur hockey in Alberta. one of 13 branches of Hockey Canada. So we represent Alberta at the national meetings, whether it be through operations, hockey development. We bring the voice of Alberta to those national meetings with the other branch members. Our responsibilities, multi-purpose, governance and operations is a huge part of who we are as Hockey Alberta. So the insurance of hockey, the rules and regulations, which there's a few of those in the game of hockey, coach education, player development, whether at the elite level or at the grassroots level, we cover both of those as being Hockey Alberta. Our head office is in Red Deer with 24 staff. We have 6 regional centers throughout Alberta, which we have a staff in each of those regional centers, Lethbridge, Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Lloyd, and Grand Prairie, just for information. And we have 2 mentor coaches that work with us, former coaches in the Alberta Junior Hockey League with a vast knowledge in hockey, and they help out, once again, grassroots and the elite side of the game, both players and coaches working and facilitating their growth. We're made up of 230 minor hockey associations, 200 club teams in junior A, B, and C, senior male, female, and adult rec. There is hockey that happens in this province that they're not registered with Hockey Alberta, and that's fine, whether it be most adult teams, you know, they just go about their business and things like that. So there is a large portion of hockey. These are just registered members. And the number we use in terms of members is 90,000. And that's registered players, coaches, team officials throughout Alberta. The Hockey Alberta Foundation, so we do have our own board and we are our own separate organization, but Hockey Alberta is our parent company and we do work closely together. We have a memorandum of understanding and we're fairly new as a charity, and we are the charitable arm of Hockey Alberta. So the vision of the foundation, improving the quality of life of Albertans through hockey. So quite simple, we think hockey is a vehicle and no different than a kid's sport. We feel that no kids should be left on the sidelines, so it's about getting kids in the game. And whether that means showing up on the outdoor rink, ball hockey, whatever it may be. Hockey, as most of us know it, it's a big commitment. It's 6-7 months. It's every weekend. We're looking at innovative and unique opportunities to get kids in the game that maybe don't want to commit to quite that commitment, and it's just a drop-in type stuff and things like that. Certainly, which one of my sons is involved in one of the programs. We're established in 2004 as a charitable organization. We have 3 pillars to our mission, those before us. So the Hall of Fame and celebrating and honoring the hockey history here in Alberta. Those who lead us, our Future Leader Development Program. It's a program that Hockey Alberta runs, and we support through grant dollars and scholarship to the student athletes, or don't have to be athletes, but to the students. And they attend a seminar and work with Hockey Alberta mentors and things like that. So they're progressing from a player into the coaching area. And we're very proud of that program. And those who need us, and this is Every Kid, Every Community grant program. And the Every Kid, Every Community program is really the platform for growing the game in Alberta. And regardless, you know, we want to eliminate barriers, whatever they may be, and get kids in the game and get them playing. Get a stick in their hand and go from there. And that's our goal. So to date, $750,000 in disbursements, more than 2,700 kids impacted, 80 plus communities impacted throughout Alberta, and 300 future leaders trained through the Future Leaders program. So those are 2 quick summaries of who we are as Hockey Alberta and the Hockey Alberta organization. Hockey in Canmore, as I mentioned, there's probably people in the room know more about me, so have Alex Kalita up there, the name of the arena, and originator of the hat trick, which is pretty popular in the hockey circles, and everybody's pretty proud when they get a hat trick. So pretty neat story here with Alex Kalita in the town of Canmore. Alex was inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame in 2008. Today, minor hockey in Canmore, about 500 members, so included in there are male and female players and coaches and team staff. So a good minor hockey association and a good number in the town of Canmore. the Canmore Flyers, from what I understand. Are they still a team today? Still existing? Yeah. Been around, played in the Alberta Big Six Hockey League, won the championship in 54, 55, and an interesting fact that's pretty amazing is the captain, Steve, sorry, Steve, about your last name? Mickey, okay, is in his 41st year with the team. So that was pretty amazing when looking up hockey in Canmore, and something to be, that is an amazing story in itself. Also a proud home of the Canmore Eagles, which is one of 16 Alberta Junior Hockey League teams, and had a very good hockey season this past year, and what junior hockey means to the communities within Alberta. Hockey Alberta in Canmore. So over 10 years, a history of bringing events to Canmore. Call it events, it could be a camp, whatever it might be, camps, training camps, exhibition games, in preparation and preparing our teams for national events. The 2012 Alberta Winter Games were hosted in the Banff Canmore. Canmore was the host to female hockey, which Hockey Alberta was obviously a big part of, and we spent a lot of time here. The Alberta Cup Bantam Hockey Showcase Tournament, which is a big one for Hockey Alberta and a big one for bantam-aged hockey players in this province, and we just finished that event here in Canmore, and I'll touch on that one in a slide or two. The Golf Classic, our biggest fundraising event as a foundation today, and this event has been in Canmore for 12 years, and we're very proud of this event and what it brings and the ability it has for us as a foundation in terms of meeting our cause. The Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Induction Gala this July will be our 3rd year that the Induction Gala has been housed here in Canmore. Just go into a couple of these. The Alberta Cup, as mentioned, the 3rd year in Canmore, the only host site in Alberta to host the event 3 years in a row. So we move the Alberta Cup around. Communities throughout Alberta get a chance to bid on it. There is an opportunity in the guidelines to host, you host your 1st year and then most go 2 years. But Canmore did such a great job. It's such, Canmore is Canmore in terms of the place that it is in the mountains, and the feedback we got from scouts and parents and things like that. We brought it back here for a 3rd year. And some people would probably want it to remain here for 10 years, but unfortunately we can't do that. So first community in Alberta to host it for 3 years, and a testament to the local group here and the work that they did. It's a 5-day event held at the end of April. 160 Western Hockey League draft eligible players, so junior hockey eligible draft players on 8 teams that are made up throughout Alberta. 60 support staff and members, so coaches, officials are in there, mentors, trainers, director of operation. It's more than a hockey tournament. It is a development opportunity for the players, but it's also a development opportunity for coaches, officials, administrators, trainers. Everybody is mentored, everybody is sharing information, and it's about hockey development and it's about education. It's also about the first stage in preparing the Alberta athletes for short-term competition, such as the Canada Winter Games, which will be in Red Deer in 2019, the Western U16 Challenge, so the athletes that attended here in Canmore, eventually 20 players will be selected and represent Alberta at a Western Challenge. And then that leads into the under-17, under-18 Team Canada national teams. So it all starts at the Alberta Cup for these players. As mentioned, a 5-day event, over 150 scouts in attendance. I would say more to 200, was conservative on my number. This is a big preparation for the Western Hockey League draft, which is 4 days later. All 22 teams are here. Most 22 teams will use this as the final meetings. So they bring in a lot of their scouting staff. They'll meet as a team. They'll also use it as a bit of an appreciation for their scouts who have done a lot of work and watched a lot of hockey in cold rinks throughout the winter. And like I say, the feedback from this group was very positive. Hundreds of parents, family members, and friends in attendance each day. So a big event, a big impact, and over 5 days, it's a showcase for hockey in Alberta. And as I mentioned, can't say enough positives about being in Canmore the last 3 years and the level of the event. The Golf Classic, 12th year in Canmore, hosted at Silver Tip to start with, and now at the Stewart Creek Golf Course. We frame this as an exceptional golf experience based on location and client servicing. So obviously golf in the mountains, and then the client servicing is golfing with NHL alumni and players and coaches, and that's the client servicing part of it. So an evening reception followed by a day of golf, top fundraising event for the foundation, 144 golfers, 20 to 25 NHL celebrities, current players or coaches, along with the alumni of the Flames and Oilers as well, who help us out quite a bit. A few names there of a few players, coaches who have attended in the past. Mark Giordano, captain with the Flames, has attended. He's confirmed this year. Jordan Eberle needs to get a few goals tomorrow night, would be very nice, but he's getting married so won't be here this year. He's getting married this particular weekend. Mike Babcock, Carey Price, Devin Dubnik, Glenn Sather are all people that have attended the event in the past. 2 to 3 days and nights in Canmore, meals, rooms, excursions and things like that people and families, while the people are golfing, their families are out doing things in Canmore for the day and staying extra days as well. The Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Gala is our 3rd year in Canmore, held the day before the Golf Classic, so it is a weekend. This year it's the Golf Classic will be Monday, Tuesday. The Hall of Fame Gala will be Sunday evening, so for us that are involved in both, we're here for 3 or 4 days putting on events and working with different groups within Canmore. In terms of numbers, we're at the Coast Hotel currently where it's at, 375. Last year we were at 280, and currently we're at 300 people confirmed to date for this year. And we're getting 375 is getting tight there at the Coast Hotel, so we're proud of the numbers that we've had so far, but looking at getting that beyond. The top celebration of hockey history in the province. Induction classes include high-profile Alberta personalities in the game of hockey and business of hockey. Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame is currently located in Red Deer. The actual hall itself is part of the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame and Museum, which is on Highway 2, just located off Highway 2 in Red Deer there. I mentioned Alex Kalita already, inducted in 2008. Benefits to the community, just summarized engagement of the Minor Hockey Association and the Canmore Eagles. This speaks to the Alberta Cup, the leadership opportunities and the volunteerism around that, and the number of people it takes to run that event. Promotion to the town of Canmore, repeat visitors, promotion of the Canmore Eagles to potential future athletes. So we have 160 Bantam hockey players show up here throughout Alberta, and they get to see the facilities, they get to see the town of Canmore. That can only be a benefit to the Canmore Eagles in terms of their recruitment process. Economic boost for hotels, restaurants, pubs, and tourism. Entertainment value for local community, the Alberta Cup. Yes, it is Bantam hockey, but it's great hockey to watch and very competitive. And the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Gala, which is a great celebration of hockey history in Alberta. Opportunity to give back through the Golf Classic and the Every Kid, Every Community program. Giving to hockey and growing the game, and organizations such as the Hockey Alberta Foundation isn't for everybody, but it is for some people, and some people have some of their dollars to give there. And it's an opportunity to be involved in the great work we do. Overall community exposure, pre and post events. We hear nothing but positives when we host something here in Canmore about the location. Hosting and connecting with the past and present hockey leaders and celebrities. Kind of speed it up here. Opportunity. So looking forward now, the opportunity, grow the prominence, profile, and importance of the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. Timing has evolved to where other groups are paying attention to this event and the level of inductees. So the last 3 years, we've really looked at the inductees and our criteria, and have elevated the inductees that are being inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. So that starts raising eyebrows, and when you get a group such as even this year, but the last 3 years, a few people start paying attention. As mentioned, ready to evolve the Hockey Hall of Fame and grow its importance and following in Alberta. Establish the gala in the heart of Alberta in the Rocky Mountains, and it must attend hockey celebration in Alberta for all. Would be a bit of the opportunity moving forward here. Vision, elevate Alberta's Hockey Hall of Fame Gala to be the profile event for the entire hockey community in Alberta, celebrating Alberta's hockey history of great contribution and achievement in the heart of the Rocky Mountains, a true Alberta experience and celebration. That's the vision here. When we think the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Induction Gala on its own is a great celebration of hockey, a little bit of a hidden gem. And as we move forward as a committee and stuff, we think the attention it's going to get from players within the game of hockey in Alberta will only grow. Moving forward, a couple points there. So over the last 3-4 years, we wanted to elevate the induction class, have completed there. So we went through a review 3.5 years ago of the induction process and that. So that's completed. We are very proud of who the last 3 years, not that we're not proud of the group before and prior, but we have moved it to the next level, which we're proud of, and we still do honor the grassroots people as well as the professional, which didn't mix all that well in the past. A standalone event, the induction gala was combined with another Hockey Alberta at our annual general meeting. We moved it off of that. It's now on its own event and has been for the last 3 years. Things we're working on, pro team support, so the Flames and Oilers, they are represented on our selection committee. They do usually buy tables and support the event, and it's just looking at solidifying that agreement with both teams to make sure every year they're here and supporting the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame and are a big part of that. Even though they have their own thing that they do as teams, we're a group that can bring both those teams together in one place, and that doesn't happen too often. Corporate support in progress, working on that, doing a better job, just making people aware, providing opportunities to be involved. Community support, one of the reasons we're here today, and the town of Canmore, home of the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame Induction Gala. Move me on to our ask, and I can ask Perry or Al or both of them to come up and speak.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Really, at the end of the day, Al Coates and I are volunteers. We think this is a great event.
I'm just going to ask you to, because
sorry.
this is actually recorded and live streamed and everything, so thousands at home are watching this.
I'll stay close.
Yeah.
Al and I think this is a great event for the reason why we're talking about it, because we'd come in here and we'd leave and we'd go, man, that was fun. People that were there, other alumni guys that were with us. That was unbelievable to sit and hear Lanny McDonald talk about old times as we do a hot stove lounge at the end of the induction. And last year, Johnny Busick telling old stories. And it was so much fun for me as a hockey guy to sit there, and then for others that weren't, that we see this as a great opportunity. And for you guys, what is the ask? It's simple. Just tell somebody about it. Because in this town, I'm not sure how many people really knew that it was here. And to Hockey Alberta, yeah, I guess we could have done more to spread the word that is why we're here. Because I think this year with the Sutter family going in as one induction, that's pretty cool on itself. Glenn Sather, a local resident here, going in. These are big names that you can get intimate with their stories afterward. And we just want the group here, Canmore, to know it's here, to see the value, whether it's just attending, telling somebody else. Right now, as you know, I'll bring Al Coates up. Right now, this is breaking even as an event itself. And all the stuff that Tim talked about on what Hockey Alberta does, breaking even's not enough. We can make this 350 people this year, move it into a bigger facility that I'm sure you guys would have access to for us, and make this a real moneymaker to put the money back in hockey for Albertans and people here locally. So I'll ask Al Coates to pop up and talk more about the business side.
Your Worship, members of the council, I don't pop up as quickly as I used to a few years ago. But anyways, part of the reason that the Hall of Fame is in Canmore is because I've had a long association with the BC Hockey Hall of Fame. And one of the great things about that was we just it's something we put on our calendar every single year because we see a lot of people that we otherwise might not see. So it's an unbelievable event in a very special place in British Columbia, in Penticton. And so when I was asked to get involved in this a few years ago, one of the things that I suggested was that we needed to take this event and put it in somewhere special within Alberta. I know personally I could go to 3 dinners a week in Calgary. The same thing happens in Edmonton, and a great event like this gets lost in big cities. So hence the reason that we're here. We think it's a very, very unique city, town, I don't know as you continue to want to refer to it. Beautiful town, and in the Rocky Mountains, not unlike Penticton in BC. In British Columbia, the BC Sports Hall of Fame is in Vancouver. It's totally overshadowed by the BC Hockey Hall of Fame in Penticton. And so that was our goal here, quite frankly, was to make this a really, really unique event. And we were sitting around during the selection process last year, and we started to ask ourselves, like, this is on us, but I don't think, or we didn't think, that the people of Canmore actually knew what we were doing. They didn't know about the event, and hence the meetings, thank you, Rob, Sean, to get us in front of you people to make, first of all, an awareness statement of what it is and what we're doing and why we want to continue here. So as Perry mentioned, and Tim has alluded to in his presentation, we're at a place now where we don't think, given the notoriety of the event, the status quo is good enough. I know personally I'm not satisfied with that. Having worked with Hockey Canada for a long time after my NHL career, one of the things I did was executive director of the Hockey Canada Foundation nationally. And what we do is to raise a lot of money, and that money in turn goes right back to Hockey Canada, and Hockey Canada in turn puts it back into programming all across the country. And in the presentation, all we do is talk about kids. We want to get kids playing the game. We want to get kids keep playing in the game. The money that we can generate from these kinds of events through the Hockey Alberta Foundation goes right back into Hockey Alberta. And so Hockey Alberta in turn puts it back into programming. So all the good things that they do are as a result of events like this. So break even is, in some people's estimation, I guess, a really good thing. I think we're here for 2 reasons: to say that we wanted to make sure all of you were aware of what we were doing. We really like the venue, love the town of Canmore, and we want to take it to another level. So we're not asking for anything today. We would like to get some feedback from you folks as to potentially partnership and or whatever, however that looks like for the future. Different venue possibly. I think we should be raising another $50,000, $100,000 out of this event, given the kinds of people that we're bringing in here. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. So on behalf of the 3 of us, I guess I'm last. Just appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you and have a very good balance of the day, and hope to see you. What's the date? July what?
23rd.
3rd. So 23rd at our induction ceremony. You'll enjoy it. You'll be talking about it for a long time thereafter. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for being here, gentlemen, and I do have to say I applaud the good sense that your group has shown in selecting Canmore as the best place to bring your group and an event such as you're describing. It's definitely the best place in the Canadian Rockies. I don't know if there's questions from members of council. Councillor Updates.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Coates was mentioning how the Sports Hall of Fame in BC's in Vancouver, and the Hall of Fame's in Penticton. Any chance that at some point in the future we could have a discussion about the Hockey Alberta Hall of Fame being in Canmore?
I don't know who's watching on the web here, so I'll be careful what I say. But I guess right now, just with the Hall of Fame and being a part of the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame, it was just the way to go. Those before me made that decision, and it seems to be working out because that group there, they know how to work with the Hall of Fame, the artifacts and things like that. But certainly, as for the future, who knows? And it doesn't hurt to have discussions and talk on what it could be and what it could look like and how it'd be supported and things like that. So I wouldn't say no, I would say yes.
Thanks.
Councillor Seeley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Lear and Mr. Berezan and Coach for being here today. I'm excited about this event. Obviously, I'm dressed for the occasion, and thanks for reaching out and including Canmore. Did you have something to?
No.
This year's inductees, the Sutter family and Glen Say, they're very much looking forward to that, and it will be an exciting event. And working with Councillor Krausert and many others, we're planning a VIP welcome for you, so we'll be happy to roll out the red carpet. Some of our sponsors are here, the Bow Valley Credit Union, Dan McLaughlin and Marla Schlachter. Thanks for being here today. And the Cleek Hotel is also helping us out with this. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the event on July 23rd.
Thanks very much, Councillor.
Can I make one other comment, Your Worship?
Sure.
Real quick. Just like Johnny Busick was mentioned last year, one of the other inductees this year is Bill Hay, former Chicago Blackhawk great, and also chairman of the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's really interesting when we make these phone calls to people who are already in the Hockey Hall of Fame, the National Hockey League, how excited they are to be inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame. So it's certainly not an afterthought on anybody, whether it's the Sutters or Bill Hay or Glen Sather or whatever. Those are pretty nice phone calls we get a chance to make, so just wanted to pass that along. Thank you for that opportunity.
Great, and thanks again for being here this afternoon. We have another delegation for council, the Epcor 2016 performance presentation. Mr. Como, Letourneau.
We leave it in?
Yes, it is. We're running off the drive though, right?
Yes.
Here it is. No, that one, yep. So I can pull this up?
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor Borman, members of council. So each year since the beginning of our relationship with Epcor Water Services, providing our water and wastewater services, we've had them come in and do a presentation to council, which is really a synopsis of what has happened the year before. So within the agreement we have with them, we have a number of performance measures that are in there, go through a wide range of things. And so we have a summary report that was given to council to look at, and we can make those available to the gallery as well, who would like one. And we have Dennis Letourneau here, who is the site manager for Epcor operations, who will go through those performance measures in detail, and trying to keep it informal. We'll certainly encourage any questions as we go through the presentation. So with that, I will hand that over to Dennis.
Thank you very much. Welcome once again to Canmore Council Chambers.
Thank you back. Thank you, Andres. And thank you for the wishes of condolences. I will pass them on to the team and on to Senior Vice President John Elford. They were both co-workers and friends who we miss dearly, so we appreciate your expressions of condolences. As I did last year, we're going to look at a quick overview of what Epcor brings to the table. We will look at some of the big wins. We will also cover, as Andreas said, the performance measures that we do each year, and then we'll wrap up by looking at some of the items that are on the table or in progress right now for 2017. So what does Epcor bring to the table? Clearly, it's a deep bench of knowledge and strength that we can rely upon to help us when we need assistance. You have 828 staff, 57 people just in lab and QA alone, 78 engineers. And most recently, I've had to rely on this deep bench of expertise when the plant struggled over the Christmas season with the loading spike that came in and hit the plant. Normally what happens is the biggest load of the year is at Christmas. And it's because everybody's in town, they're all in their hotels, the restaurants are full, people are eating and celebrating, and this all comes down to the wastewater treatment plant at some point. And what typically happens is the plant receives this spike, this heavy load, and then it struggles a bit for a couple of days, and then it rebounds back, and then we ease into the January season. Now what happened last Christmas is that the spike came in, but the plant didn't entirely rebound back, and we found that it was struggling to remove TANs, which are total ammonia and nitrogen. So as soon as we saw that happening, I made a request for assistance, and within 24 hours, we had a team of experts assembled. We were doing daily conference calls. They were looking at data. They were running extra tests. We were sending samples up to labs in Edmonton. And we were trying to determine what had happened, and they were able to determine that when the spike came in, it actually overwhelmed some of the bacteria in the plant that deals with the removal of nitrogen. We have filters in the plant, and the end side filters specifically remove nitrogen. And we lost some of the bacteria in those filters, not all of them, but some of the population. And the problem with inside bacteria is it just doesn't like to grow in cold temperatures. Once it's gone, it's tough to get it back until things warm up. So while we're waiting for the population to recover as the temperatures resume higher, the team is now shifting its focus on determining what actually occurred to overwhelm the bacteria in this particular year when it didn't in previous years, what parameters had changed. And once we find the answers to that, we'll be able to take proactive steps and put measures in place so that we can deal with the spike, which we know is going to come again every winter, as it always does.
Don't have the answer yet. Darn.
Not
I
yet,
thought you were
but
gonna- Ta-da! The answer is.
Well, one of the areas that's now an area of focus, and I have to be careful because I'll go off on a rant, but it's the suspicion that years and years of accumulated fats, oils, and grease, and you've heard this before, have gone in and clogged up the underdrains in these filters. And these are not easy filters to get into. They are confined space, dangerous environments with opportunities for H2S gas. You need specialized people with specialized equipment that we bring out of Calgary. We have over 1,000 nozzles in each of these underdrains. We have 10 filters, so 10,000 nozzles to clean. The quote we had, as an example, just to clean one filter in this environment was $60,000. So it's not a cheap endeavor, and it's not an easy endeavor. It's very dangerous and has to be done by the right people with the right equipment. So again, I could spend half an hour on fats, oils, and grease, but if there's and I don't want to manipulate the media, but if there's a message to be taken here, it is that fats, oils, and grease, and the improper disposal of those by both commercial and residential citizens has a very costly impact to our operation, and as a result to the town, because the town does pay us to deal with this. We flush all the main arteries in town yearly as a matter of good practice to remove fats, oils, and grease, which shouldn't be there to begin with. And these arteries, of course, are the busiest traffic areas: Main Street, Bow Valley Trail, Railway Avenue. These are where all the food processing takes place, and they're the most dangerous ones to flush. No one wants to see a Vector truck in the middle of Main Street in the middle of the day when they're trying to get from point A to point B. So, my poor operators are placed in hazardous situations that they're working out there in environments that aren't the best. They're dealing with, for lack of a better word, very rancid grease coming out of these pipes, and they've got people with road rage that are angry because their commute is now 10 minutes instead of 7. So it's
Heard a bit about that frustration.
I'm going to stop because I can go for half an hour, but I think the point is it's something we'd like. If I had 3 wishes at Christmas, I'm sure one of the top 3 would be for the community to recognize that the proper disposal of fats, oils, and greases it would make my life and the town's life
Why don't
much
you
more
do a letter
pleasant.
to the editor? I find that fun.
Moving on. Some of the big wins, we had no lost time work incidents in 2016. We maintained the perfect record that we've had for quite a few years now. All of the preventative maintenance tasks were successfully completed. These are by millwrights and electricians and operators. The utility master plan was delivered to council by consultant BSCI a little earlier, and the DAF construction was completed at the end of December. We continue the commissioning of the DAF throughout this year. Sanitary lift station number 4 was completed earlier in 2016, on time and on budget, as well the clear well at Pump House 2. Technically, we got it commissioned just after the new year, but it was pretty much done in 2016. So that's up and running, and in fact, they're just finishing some landscaping that they started, I believe, today, and will be wrapped up about May 18th. We also, of course, swapped out 271 water meters, and I believe about 17 of those were commercial meters this year. The 4 performance measures that we always look at: safety, environment, customer satisfaction, quality, and efficiency. On the safety side, again, no lost time incidents, perfect record. All of the, in fact, we exceeded our target for preventative activities, anything that can decrease the chance of an HS&E event. Training matrix was followed this year, and we averaged 34 hours of safety training for every employee in Epcor in 2016. On the environmental side, total releases and contraventions target was 15. We totaled 13 in 2016. We were low on the releases, and we were higher on the contraventions. And primarily the reason why we were higher on the contraventions versus last couple of years was because of the large amount of capital activity that we took that was disruptive in nature to our major facilities. So we were taking down big operations like the wastewater treatment plant, taking down operations like Pump House 2. And I know, I can't quantify, but I know from my past experience in the industry of 20 years that when you take a system that's meant to operate continuously and you stop it, you start it, you stop it, you start it, you bypass part of it, things happen. And you're inviting gremlins to come in and mess with your components. It just is a fact that we all know, that anyone who's been in transportation or in any business where you're getting a product from A to B in continuous fashion, once you interrupt that process, you invite things to happen. So a lot of these contraventions were very small in nature, but they were items like moving, when we changed the PLC upgrade in the headworks, this is essentially changing the old brain for a new brain. We had to disconnect every single component in the headworks of the plant and reconnect it to the new brain and power it down and fire it up. And some of these components have been around for 20 years, so they're nearing the end of their useful life. They've been happily off in the corner, doing their job, uninterrupted for 20 years, and now we've taken them, we've disconnected them, we've moved them, some of them around in the panel, we reconnect them, we fire them up. And in one instance, a switch just started to malfunction intermittently about an hour after we did this. It resulted in the loss of data connection to Pump House 1 for 15 minutes. Pump House 1 worked perfectly fine. The water was perfectly safe. It took the water out, it analyzed it, it dosed it. It has its own preventative, protective measures to stop if there's any issues. But we didn't collect the data of what it was doing for 15 minutes, and our approval only allows us 5. So we called it in. In another instance, we took down the wastewater backwash tank. Again, a major part of the process. And the contractor had a pipe to reroute the wastewater around it. The pipe developed a very small leak, and the second one drop of wastewater hits the ground, we have to call it in. So these were small events, but nonetheless, it added up. If there's a silver lining from this, it's that Epcor calls in every little thing that happens, regardless of big or small, or regardless of the relevance. It's ingrained in the psyche of my operators, and it's part of the culture of Epcor. You report it, you report it, you report it. So, and that's important because basically Epcor functions on public trust. You lose public trust, you lose the business. So they need to enforce the perception that we do in fact report everything that goes on. We fully disclose everything, and that you can sleep soundly at night knowing that if we say the water's safe, the water's safe. Other than that, we were 100% on regulatory reporting, and we met our target for proactive activities. As always, we've made over 5,000 tests last year on drinking water alone, and we conducted over 2,000 tests on the wastewater. The environmental water loss graph is going to be different this year. We've changed the format of the presentation with the support and encouragement of engineering and Department of Public Works. What the graph has shown in the past has been the unaccounted for water, and what happened is the AWWA actually did a study back in 2001 where they looked at jurisdictions in most of the United States and found that a great number of municipalities were using unaccounted for water as a metric for measuring water loss. But that metric is subject to interpretation, and it can be played with. And so they suggested and advocated a standard where you show the entire water production and where the water ends up in general components. So we're moving the display of water loss to that format. So for example, you see in 2016, total water production is the entire graph. The dark blue portion is the revenue water, which is a term that they advocate us using. It's all of the water that actually made it to the meter, was recorded, was billed. You collected revenue for it. The green band is water that also made it to a meter, was recorded, but you were not billed for it because it's water going to the municipality, municipal buildings, water used for flooding the rinks, flooding the pond. So we know the quantity, but we didn't bill for it. What remains above that is water that was either lost through leaks that we did not detect, or water that was lost through leaks that we did detect, and once we repaired it, we estimated how much water had gone through that leak. And also water that it's authorized, but we didn't meter it. For instance, water that's used for construction, water that's used for flushing the DNC system, water that's used for firefighting exercises, things like that. It's authorized, but we don't meter it. So that is the format moving forward. So the general view shows that somewhere between about 29.5% is the average over those years of the top portion of the bar. And we've actually started an aggressive leak detection system this year in Canmore. We've purchased new equipment that's acoustic detection equipment, because in Canmore the soil is not it's not conducive to detecting leaks. In places like Edmonton, where you've got clay soil, the water just pops up. You can see it almost the second the leak occurs. In Canmore, you have gravelly soil, and sometimes the leak doesn't surface. So the only way to find that leak is actually to go and listen for it using specialized equipment. So we'll be starting a leak detection program this summer, and we'll be sharing the results with engineering and with the Department of Public Works. And then once we see what we're finding out, we'll circle back with them and sit down and decide how we're going to address whatever we find.
The data that's shown on this chart, how would that compare to the other plants that you operate around and about?
That's a good question. I haven't made a benchmark comparison with some of the other plants, but I can certainly look at that and see how it compares. I believe that Blair did mention in our last meeting, Blair of Department of Engineering, that the water production per capita seemed to be in line with industry metrics.
So would you guess that 30% unaccounted water or unmetered water would be kind of normal, or, I mean, it sounds high.
Yeah, it's difficult to compare with others because we don't have access to the underlying data that others have when they present their graphs to us, so we don't know whether we're comparing apples and apples and whether they're interpreting different components of water loss the same as we are. So it would be difficult for me to say outright that yes, we're in line with their numbers, or the fact that they may show 25% and we show 30%, maybe it's because they interpret some of their water loss differently than we do. I'd have to see the underlying data to be confident that we have an apples and apples comparison.
Sorry, maybe if I can just add.
Sure.
So to what Dennis was talking about, it's really this lighter blue section here, this 31%, where historically that we would have represented that number as smaller because we would have made a number of assumptions. So if we know there's a crack in a pipe, we know the size of the pipe, especially once we dig it up, and we know that it's been running for 6 months, and we estimate how much water, and we pull that out of there. And so eventually that number gets smaller and smaller and smaller and shows a much more favorable, but it doesn't really show us anything valuable because we don't know how much water we're losing because of there's the other components like theft and that. So each municipality tends to take a different approach on how they calculate these things, the calculation numbers that they use, the assumptions they make. And so because we do that, it is very difficult to make a cross-municipal comparison on leak detection. What I can say is we do know, because we hear these stories popping up in the news quite frequently, that this is a problem plaguing many municipalities. And as Dennis pointed out, you know, a lot of those municipalities are fortunate in the soil makeups that they have, that they can find them right away before they sit there for years and years and years, and we have this loss that we just can't pinpoint, where we're in a much more difficult situation because of the soils we have, and so we can't wait for them to pop up. We have to do this leak detection work with this acoustic. So I don't know if that helps.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you. Were there any further questions on this graph? Okay. Along the lines of environment, of course, it's important that the wastewater treatment plant's impact on the river is not adversely affecting the river. So we take measurements upstream and we take measurements downstream. And we measure for 4 items, total phosphorus, TAN, TSS, which is total suspended solids, and fecal coliform. And we measure the difference between upstream and downstream. So for example, total phosphorus in 2015, the difference between the upstream and downstream was an increase of 0.002. In 2016, the increase was 0.003. And as you can see, the Bow River Basin guidelines allow us 0.014 for an increase. So on all 4 of these measures, we're well within the guidelines that are allowed.
Sorry, if I can just add one. Sorry.
Yes.
Just one thing to highlight. If you look at the map, you can see the A, B, C, and D. The discharge from the wastewater treatment plant is just below the letter B.
That's right. So you can see the 2 measurement points, A and B, are upstream, and then C and D are downstream. And so we get an accurate representation of the change in the quality of the water.
And are those numbers worrisome in any way? I mean, what's that? They look like very small numbers. Is that what we're looking for?
Yes. The third row, which is the BRBC guideline, that is the number below which we need to be. That is what's allowed. So for instance, in total phosphorus TP, we are allowed 0.014 increase,
Right.
upstream to downstream, but the actual measured increases were 0.002 and 0.003. Okay. Benthic algae has actually become an issue downstream of Calgary. A lot of the wastewater treatment plants are now undergoing retrofits because of the abundance of benthic algae that's appearing in the Bow River downstream of Calgary. It's not harmful in of itself. Benthic algae in small quantities feeds benthic insects, which of course benthic fish eat, but in large quantities it can be harmful. At night it removes oxygen from the water and can actually result in fish kills because it starves the fish of oxygen at night. So it was very important that we test for that. As you can see on the right-hand side, we're allowed 150 milligrams per meter squared per the guideline. And our scale here on this chart only goes up to 30. To actually hit 150, that scale would have to be 5 times as high just to even hit the limit we're allowed to hit. So basically what it's saying is that the results, no matter where we took these measurements, upstream or downstream, are well within the allowable limits. So it's basically a non-issue here, which is good news. On the customer satisfaction index, we did have managed to restore all of the outages in 2016 within 24 hours. Epcor did conduct a customer satisfaction survey in 2016, and they polled 100 individuals, and the results are on the next slide, at least a summary. 94% of the residents were moderately or very satisfied with the water service, and 95% of the residents were satisfied with the quality of their water, which maintains consistency with the results that were taken 2 years before. On the quality efficiency index, again, we managed to complete all the preventative maintenance activities in 2016, and both our natural gas consumption and power consumption were below the threshold set within our contract. And there's an illustration of the power consumption threshold in red in kilowatt hours, and then over the last 3 years, here's how the consumption has has grown over the months throughout each year. So 2016, actually, we landed in between 2014 and 2015. So we're keeping tabs on power usage and trying to minimize it as much as possible. It benefits Epcor and it benefits the town. And the same thing on the gas side. We're well under the threshold. Looking forward to 2017, there's very few capital projects on the water side. We're just wrapping up the clear well at Pump House 2 again. It should be done in a couple weeks. And we have our ongoing water meter replacement program. The majority of the capital work in 2017 is actually in the wastewater treatment plant. So we had the DAF, which was completed in 2016 and which we're going to be commissioning throughout the year. We have 4 different seasons. It results in very different flows throughout the year. So we need to see how to handle each of these flows with different settings in the DAF. And once we've got a year under our belt, we'll have a playbook put together for the operators that they can use going forward. The backup power, these are all projects that you've seen and approved, so I won't go too deep into any of them, but it's just a summary to confirm that we're on track and moving forward with these. Backup power upgrade is again to ensure that critical items such as air compressors are being backed up. We have several mechanical systems that are on track to be changed out this year at the treatment plant. The watering system will be upgraded next year, but we need to design it first. And we are in the process of doing design testing to determine what technology that we're going to move forward with next year. On the storage facility side, we have critical response equipment such as the Vector and a high-pressure water trailer, which will be able to function 12 months a year once we have them in a heated environment. So the design specs for that is being created right now. Lift Station 2 is going to be replaced next year. So, of course, this year we've just awarded the design contract, and I believe there's a kickoff meeting this week. As always, each year we inspect and repair the sanitary sewer system with an aim to reducing inflow and infiltration. So that is ongoing, and in fact, it started this week. We do have a cube van, which is arrived at the end of its useful life, and I can vouch for that because I've driven it. So we're going to get a new cube van this year. As well, there's a study planned for the measurement of the anticipated impact of increased carburetor usage in the town and what its impact would be on the wastewater collection and treatment system. So that sums up what we're looking at doing in 2017. I think with that,
while you've got that up there and
sure.
Made me think about it. So we talked quite a bit about the approach of moving towards carburetors rather than intensive composting. So how really high level, I don't want to take another 15 minutes, but how would you go about doing a carburetor impact study?
The consultant that's been retained has a scope that's laid out, and I think I'm going to let Andreas respond to it because he's been working directly with that consultant.
Yeah, so the main thing that the collection system in the plant is going to see right away is the increased amount of solids loading. So there's all this organic that's being flushed down the sewer lines is going to show up in the lift stations and at the front of the plant. And so they're going to make estimations on what that volume of extra loading is going to be, that extra solids, and then assess the plant's capacity to deal with that extra solids loading. So that's primarily high level what they're going to look at.
It's all sort of desktop study, or?
Yes. Yeah, it's fully a desktop study, and it's just going to look at increased loading at the lift stations and the plant.
Okay, looking forward to the results. Councillor Comfort, you have a question?
I just wondered about the fog. So do carburetors, if people dump their fats, oils, and grease down there, does it impede that whole side of things with the composting?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
Yeah, so the impact of, like if fog material were allowed through a carburetor, yeah, so we would still, if we were to move ahead with a encouragement or some type of program for carburetors, we would be promoting best practice, which would continue to not permit fogs, oils, and greases down there. So this is really for the prep food, is what the main items we'd be wanting to go for. So where it gets a bit tricky is when people are cleaning their plates, and so there's oils and dressings and things like that, where it gets a bit difficult. And because best practice includes cold water, it will get it through their pipe out onto the road. Where it has problems is when it starts to warm up and congeal with other products, then it has a chance to bind in lift stations and so on, where it gets problematic.
Okay. And I just wondered, are there other places where you've seen perhaps best practices for dealing with, I don't know, both commercial and residential abuse of disposal of fats, oils, and grease?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we have our suspicions on specific businesses in town that we do need to go and do regular visits. And so we are doing that. And I mean, it's really restaurants that cook with oils and so deep fried foods, and does a lot of prep with oils and salad dressings and things like that.
Okay,
So
thanks.
do you have like, what, an undercover fog patrol or?
No, we don't do it discreetly. We have the backup, and we have our suspicion based on who's upstream, and we start knocking on doors with the assistance of bylaw services, and that tends to get their attention pretty quickly.
I bet it does. Wouldn't want Mr. Burt pounding at my door. Oh, do tell.
Fish eye.
So, Mr.
Well, I can say we visited one, and I won't, of course, won't name the business, but we did visit one of the businesses that we targeted and did a proper inspection with the assistance of bylaw. And then about a month later, I actually went there for lunch, and he saw the Epcor vehicle pulling up, and I got up and says, no, I'm just here for lunch. You know, kind of look on his face. Right?
Yeah, I like it.
Anyway, so that pretty much wraps up the presentation. I'm open to questions on any of the slides that we presented.
Yeah. Well, I was asking questions throughout the presentation, and I don't know if there's any summary questions from anybody. Seeing none, I really appreciate Epcor coming every year and giving this update. It sounds weird, but I find it really interesting. Well, it is interesting. So it's great having you here, Mr. Letourneau, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
This time we'll move on to the minutes of the April 4th meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on to another fascinating report, Mr. Como, the Municipal Benchmark Initiative around wastewater. Kept me fascinated for hours, this report.
We'll try to keep that going. So yes, good afternoon again. Following a similar theme, wastewater treatment. So yes, we are here this afternoon to talk about a couple of benchmarking reports that have been gone through the process, being developed by the SMEs, which is our subject matter experts. Then it's gone up to the working group, which was made up of senior administration of these.
Did you just make up a new acronym there?
I did, yeah. SMEs. Subject, well, no, I didn't make it up, but we're using it, which is subject matter experts.
And who made that one?
No, I wish I could take credit, so you have to change that.
Okay, anyways.
Oh, the Alberta benchmarking, yeah, that
SMEs.
initiative, yeah,
SMEs, okay.
SMEs. And
Bless
so
you. Bless you.
we have a number of participating municipalities. They're reviewing a number of municipal services and going through a number of different measures, both based on efficiencies and effectiveness. And so we've had an opportunity to release one publicly, which was the water. And so we have the opportunity this afternoon to share with council and the community the two next, which is both wastewater and solid waste services, which Mr. Robbins will be presenting later. So this one is about wastewater, not water. And as I mentioned, there are 10 municipalities that typically are part of the initiative. However, municipalities participating in the initiative do have the opportunity to participate in all or some of the different service evaluations. So in this particular case, these are the 6 that participated. So Airdrie, the town of Canmore, the town of Banff, City of Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and the town of Okotoks all participated. And so with that, what I wanted to make very clear, when we talk about wastewater, it is the collection of it. So we kind of hinted at that in Epcor's presentation, where once you put things down your drain or flush your toilet, all the way to the front of the plant, that we call the collection system. So it's the pipes that carry it along the way, it's the lift stations that give it the extra boost of pressure to keep it moving towards the front of the plant. And the treatment component is once it hits the plant, and we end up, it goes through the entire facility, and we end up with 2 different materials. So there's the water, actually 3 different materials. There's the water, nope, sorry, there is 3, but I won't. Okay, so there's the water, and then there is, so we try to take as much of the clean water out, and then there's stuff left behind, which is the biosolid, which is the third piece that the wastewater looks at. And I just want to make clear that it does not include storm water, so those storm retention ponds, any like that, it does not include. So with that, I wanted to highlight our system. So here's the map of Canmore. Right here, smack dab in the middle, is the wastewater treatment plant, and all those other dots are the lift stations that we have scattered throughout the community. So we have 11 of them. And then you can see this is kind of the general direction of flow. So anything over here on the Avens area, this side of Cougar Creek, go down to lift station 6 and eventually make it down to here. Same thing with Silvertip. This is lift station 7 and it comes down here. Larch area, lift station 5, makes its way down to here across the Bow River. Lift station 4 brings it across, and then it peaks, and it all eventually makes its way to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's how it all comes in. That's the collection system. Then it goes through the plant, and then, as I mentioned, there are 2 byproducts that we end up having. So just as a reminder, this is the biosolids. So it's a darker brown, and it makes its way to Penhold, Alberta, to a private farm that composts it on site. And then we have a water, as mentioned by Dennis, that goes through strict testing, and then once it meets those conditions, it's allowed to be released into the Bow River, and that's what this takes place. Okay? So, with that, we're going to move into the presentation. It's going to be just a sample of the graphs that are in there, and so the graphs really do tell a story, and so we wanted to just highlight as an example that this will be predominantly the categories that we look at when we looked at likely all the services. So we look at the amortization costs, we look at the overhead costs, and then the indirect costs, so not right boots on the ground, and then the direct costs. So in this case, those would largely be fees that we pay to Epcor for work in scope and out of scope. And then we also trended over 3 years, and then we can see how we fare with other communities, how we're trending over the 3 years, and then a breakout of each one. So for wastewater, and it varies from different service types, we have landed on 8 different benchmarks to be measured. So there's a sample of them there. We're going to go through most of them, so I'm not going to read them off. But you can see that there are only 8. Some cases you might have 12, some you may only have 3 or 4. So it really varies what they can measure, what is valuable to measure, because at the end of the day, we ultimately want to tell a story of, how are we doing compared to other municipalities and how are we trending over time. So with that, we'll move into the first one, one of the most important ones, which is the total system cost to run the entire facility. So this is the cost per megaliter. And you can see here, we've got the municipalities spread along the bottom, done in their 3-year categories, and then this red dash is what the average was found to be based on all the municipalities. So here we are along the bottom, and you can see Canmore here is basically right here in the middle. And we've broken it out, like I've done in the slide before. We've done it by the cost of the collection, which is the blue along here, so that's getting it to the plant. The green is once it's at the plant, and then the cost is the biosolids component. So you can see here, Airdrie, they don't have biosolids. They send it directly to the City of Calgary, for example. So they don't have to dispose of it, the City of Calgary does. Over here in Lethbridge, they dredge their lagoons from time to time, making them, and so in that particular year, they don't have any data because they didn't collect any. And then you can see here, us Canmore, our disposal costs. One thing that's really interesting is, and you can see this as the systems are larger, so the larger urban, like the city of Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, the larger they are, the less it costs to treat wastewater. They just have more material to spread those costs over as they generate more, which is what we were expecting and what we found. So the smaller municipalities tend to be more expensive, and the larger municipalities less expensive per megaliter.
Unless you're shipping it to Calgary.
Pardon me?
Unless you're shipping it off to Calgary, in which case it's more expensive.
It appears to be a decision that the city of Airdrie is obviously very aware of, and so they would have to make some decisions and continue with or look to make a change. So this is actually the same, the alignment is the same, it just breaks it out differently from direct, indirect, the overhead costs and the amortization costs. So you can see what we found interesting is the amortization cost was generally fairly similar across the board. It's that one section all the way across sitting on top. We did note that, for example, the town of Banff has a little bit more than most municipalities because they've invested heavily on the biosolids, the environmental system. And they do have an extra step that the other participating municipalities do not need to have because they are discharging into a national park. So then if we look at just the treatment costs and the collection costs, you can see it fluctuates. And this really tells a story of the differences between participating municipalities. So we have here Okotoks at the far end on the treatment side, and then bang over here on the collection side, they're on the other end of the spectrum. So Okotoks is fairly flat. Things just move along the bottom. They don't have a lot of topography like some of the other members, like Lethbridge, the town of Canmore, and the town of Banff, for example. So this kind of helps break it out by that. You can see the city of Airdrie, again, because they send their wastewater to the city of Calgary, they don't have any amortization costs. The biosolids piece, so like I said, Lethbridge didn't have any numbers for 2013. Airdrie, because they do send it to the city of Calgary, they don't have it broken out. And so it's just us over here with our biosolids costs. Now, what is interesting about this and with the approach is to ensure that we had an apple-to-apple comparison or a digested apple-to-apple comparison. The last process of the wastewater treatment plant is it comes out of the digester and we press it and we try to get as much water out of it as possible. Each wastewater treatment plant has something similar. They either run it through a centrifuge or a press. And each one of those can come up with a better or a different degree of percent solid. Ideally, you want a high percent of solid because then you're not managing, you're not composting, you're not hauling water, which is what we end up. So the technology we have right now has been giving us somewhere between 12 and 15% solid. And as a result, the bulk of what we send to market for composting is water. There's a lot of it there. And so if council recalls, they've approved a capital project to replace the dewatering system we have right now so that we can improve our efficiencies in pressing the water out of our wastewater treatment plant. So the technology we're moving towards is going to get us closer between 20 to 25%, which is more in line with some of these other municipalities. And as a result, when we take it to a kiln and we dry it, we don't have as much material. So that's why we are as high as we are. What we do like to highlight, though, despite being on the high side, is that we do get to, we are dropping over time, and we're hoping with the introduction of the dewatering system that we get to bring those costs down even farther as we get to introduce that. So at this point, we're at the design stage with construction in 2018.
Right. So if we can get the solids dewatered more towards that, to the target you mentioned, is it still on the possibility side that then those solids would only be trucked to Banff rather than all the way out to Penhold, or?
Yes, then, right now, we haven't gone further with the town of Banff simply because we are having such low percent solid that we would end up in a surcharge situation. They would have to do some type of amendment to it so that they could receive it, and so it's simpler for us because there is no surcharge at the new facility. Once we are able to have a higher percent, we can take it to them, and we're at least sit down and talk about how that would work.
And assume that 20 to 25% solid would work for their facility?
Yes, I believe they have similar solid content, so. Yeah.
And if that was the case, our overall cost, direct costs would go down substantially?
Yeah, one of the biggest costs is the tipping fee. So if we can reduce the tipping fee because we've reduced the volume, which reduces the tonnage. And then same thing with the hauling. It's the same thing. If we can reduce that, we win on many accounts.
Great. Councillor Russell?
Just when you said that our biggest cost is our tipping fee, what are we paying for tipping fee for our biosolids?
Currently, I believe it's $105.
Does that include trucking?
Yes.
So what's the split between trucking and, would you know that, or would you be able to
I
send
do
that?
know it, I just can't share it. It's proprietary.
We're paying the bill, but we can't be told.
We can't disclose publicly the split. We can share the total cost.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a private firm. If they may have different agreements with other municipalities and other companies on what the disposal fee is for them to take it at their gate, and we likely have a different fee.
But we're not privy to what we're paying. Is that what I'm? That's
We're not privy
we
to
are.
share it publicly.
Okay, we can
Yes.
discuss it outside this. Thanks.
All right. So power consumed, like I highlighted at the map, we do have a number of lift stations, quite a bit. For perspective, there are 6, one's a new one in Banff, and we have 11. So there's quite a bit there. We have to do a lot of pumping to get it across town to our wastewater treatment plant. So that is largely why we are on the high side. Also, our wastewater treatment plant is a unique one. The other municipalities don't have one like it, in that it has a very small footprint, and in order for us to have that, it's almost like a plant stacked on top of each other. So even though things come in at ground level, we have to pump it up, and then the gravity feeds down, and we have to pump it up again, and gravity feeds. So all of those times we pump that material, it costs us, that other municipalities that are going to be a little bit more linear, a little flatter, don't have to deal with. However, what is great because of Epcor's efficiencies, we've been able to reduce, at least keep level or drop how much power we use. So this is not what we're charged. This is different than the fees that we're charged, but actually how much power we actually use year over year. So that is a good thing, because in some cases we have been getting more, selling more water. We have more influent coming in, but our power costs have been remain fairly level. And then on the utility bill, so this is a similar chart that was shared with council that was in the water report. So the SMEs and the working group landed on a 19 cubic meter consumption, average consumption per month. I believe that was the average for the city of Edmonton. And so what we've done is we've taken our rates, our variable rates and our fixed rates, and we've put it into the calculation assuming 19, even though we would be much less than that. Average in Canmore is closer to 15 cubic meters per month. So if we, and it's difficult to show this because it shows the total bill for the residential sector. So if we were to look at the rates in detail, which is in your report, is we are just behind Medicine Hat for the fixed rate, for the larger fixed rate. So we don't have the highest, but we do, and it was intentional to be high simply because of the part-time population we have. We need to ensure that we get some revenue to support the utility, and the best way to do that is a fixed rate. It's guaranteed revenue. Then the other side is the variable. It's based on how much water each household uses. And so in that regard, we are actually the second lowest behind the city of Lethbridge for our variable rate. So the other thing I wanted to highlight is, in particular here, is you can see that it's growing for Canmore year over year. And our projections is that things should level off. So if council recalls, we've had a number of discussions on the utility rates and the ratio between the residential and the commercial sector, and that the residential sector has been subsidizing the commercial sector. So we've talked and have been given direction to make that correction over 3 or 4 years. And so we're hopeful that in the next couple of years that we're going to see our rates staying relatively level in comparison to other municipalities because of that transition. This just shows the residential, it doesn't show the commercial. So our assumption is that on the other municipalities have that differential ratio from commercial to residential, which is why their rates are likely lower than ours. Okay.
So that's not, am I hearing that other municipalities in this study have combined commercial and residential to arrive at these numbers and we haven't?
I'm sorry? This is just a residential bill.
Right.
And so we have, as I said, our rates have been higher on the residential side because we haven't been following that ratio with the different meter sizes. That 1 to 25 we get for the larger 4-inch meters. So as we transition to that, what we've seen with the residential rates is they've had very little increase. So over the last couple of years, as we continue to do that adjustment, where we've seen on the commercial side to pick up, the commercial side has grown. We believe that what's happened in these other jurisdictions is they were already there. And so as we make our correction and then everything is level, then we feel our rates, our bills will be more in line with other municipalities.
Great, thanks.
Okay. And so in summary, we're quite proud of how Canmore did. In general, we are very much in the middle in terms of collection and treatment costs. And we did talk about where we are a little bit of the exception, which is the biosolids, which we hope our projection is will change as we install a new dewatering system to increase our percent solid. The power we've talked about, and then we just finished discussing the utility rates that we hope will be in the future more in line with other municipalities. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions just prompted by the graphs in the report, and others likely do as well. So I'll just run through some of them. I'm looking at the chart 2.2, the total wastewater system cost efficiency, and I was wondering if any of the other municipalities that are in the study also service or contract the service to Epcor.
Okotoks does.
Okotoks does as well.
Yes.
I guess what I'm trying to get
And sorry,
to,
actually, if I can, Mayor Borman, the town of Banff during this period would have been in there as well.
and maybe this is already data or something that can be pulled from the work, I'm just not seeing it, but I'm wondering if there's any clear data that shows the efficiency of our choice of contracting the service out, or not. Maybe it's just not there, but.
There's two ways we can look at the contracted service. We can look at ours as far our situation where we hire a third-party contractor to do the operations, but it's our facility. I believe this report has said that generally our costs are in line with other jurisdictions, so there's nothing to suggest that we need to look at providing the service differently. I did highlight that the city Airdrie, for example, also does a contracted service where they don't own any of the infrastructure and pay a megaliter fee or cubic meter fee to the city of Calgary. And you can see, in that case, that may not be the best situation for them, something for them to at least discuss. However, the cost to provide wastewater treatment is significant. It's much outweighs a ratio of 4 to 1 for water. So it's not something that a municipality should enter into lightly. So from a contract to deliver it, to give it to somebody else, it looks like that may be something for them to think about. As far as us hiring a contractor to provide our services with it, our infrastructure, I don't believe that. I don't believe that would be the case.
Okay. I mean, the advantages of contracting service to Epcor, I think are well understood. Well, Mr. Letourneau's presentation spoke to it, the access to the wealth of expertise and a much bigger pool of information and people that know what they're doing. That's clear.
Yeah, they get great
I'm
depth.
just wondering if there is any way of pulling out of this data something that would make it clear that not only is it really great choice for the town of Canmore to be working with Epcor from the delivery side or from the, the functionality side, but also from the overall cost side. And
I think each municipality is just unique enough that there's just circumstances so different that it would be difficult to make that comparison.
great, thank you. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Como, for your presentation. I'm looking at Part 3, water quality. It was a graph on page 66 of our agenda package, page 40 of the report. And it seems that there's, compared to others, a very high fecal coliform amount there, and yet during the presentation by Mr. Letourneau, I think that it showed us back down around that 1 part in the change. So was this just an anomaly prior to an upgrade that dealt with this, or?
Yes, and so this one here, if when we were discussing going ahead with the DAF upgrade that has just been commissioned December or completed and now commissioning, at that point, because there was a drop in development, that was one of the projects we looked to defer,
Right.
and especially because that was pending grant dollars. And that was a special report that we had brought to council to go ahead without approval for grant dollars because it was so, and so these exceedances helped put the case forward to council that we just could not wait any longer.
So I remember that, and so now, though, if we were looking at today's numbers, we'd be back down, I presume, aligned or even better than most as far as the amount of fecal coliforms released. Correct?
Yeah, so,
okay.
Next steps would be, I don't know if it's to release the remaining service review documents or to now go back in some of the ones that have been released and put in the 15-16 data, and we should see those numbers back in line where they were like in 2012.
Actually, that will be very interesting to see over time, the movement based on new information and changes that have been made. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would add that the benchmarking takes a lot of work. When an administration does see it as valuable, but also recognizing every jurisdiction is a little bit different. What we really see benefit, now we only have 3 years, is how are we trending over time. Yeah.
Right.
Just help me understand something else then, and it's relating to carburetors again. So with our system, we use the BAF, the biological aerated filters, but we don't have the BNR, the biological nutrient removal system. Is that right?
Yes. And that one, from my understanding, we don't have that facility, but it does a much better job at removing phosphorus.
And it's specifically phosphorus, nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, it says in the report.
That's the key one that it does. And so when we sit down with the province each 10 years to review our approval, that's the one that always comes up because it has an impact on algae growth in the Bow
Right.
River.
Right, and that's why the town of Banff has that, because they have different standards they have to meet in the park,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about using carburetors as a means of dealing with the composting, wouldn't that be increasing the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus going into the system?
Going into the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah,
So what I think may come out of this report is it will say it'll say two things, or one of two things. One, it'll say, yes, if you want to go ahead and install carburetors community-wide, you're going to get this certain level of extra loading at the plant. To allow the plant to accommodate that, you will need to do X, Y, and Z upgrades. So that is something that we'll need to wrestle with is how do we want to invest in that infrastructure or look at something different? Or it may come back and say the plant has the capacity. We don't know. That's why we're going through this review. But it may suggest upgrades that can remove a lot of this additional loading.
I see. So something like this BNR might be a recommendation if we go down that path?
I would not think so. I think we have invested in the BAF system, and that is the system we will have for a long time.
So you wouldn't do both?
No,
Okay.
no, it's one or the
So
other.
am I, I'm not a scientist, really. So is it right or wrong to assume that adding more organic material into the wastewater would possibly increase the nitrogen and phosphorus? Does that make sense or not?
It's possible, yeah. It's just really the plant's ability to pull it out. That's the key piece, because what we're mostly held toward is the effluent quality before we discharge into the river. So if there's an interim step that can be added, like we did with the DEF, right? That was thrown sort of mixed in as an interim step between two other processes. If we can look at something just like that, maybe perhaps at the headworks where it enters the plant that can pull a lot of this organic loading out and bring it right to the press. It doesn't actually have to go through the whole plant and get mixed in with the bugs. That may be a possibility.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, are there other questions then at this time? Thanks for that report. All I can say is I'm glad we got into this benchmarking process in the first place, because the data is really great. It was on the water report you presented, and this one, and the solids as well. Thank you. Oh, that looks like Mike. That was not Mike. There we go.
There we go. So if you like graphs, I got more graphs.
Very good. Love graphs.
So yeah, we're going to take a look at the third report to come out. This is the solid waste benchmarking report here. In this benchmarking report, 7 municipalities participated, so the addition of Red Deer, so all the same ones that participated in the wastewater are there. We looked at sort of 3 dimensions of it. Efficiency, sort of being sort of measured as cost per unit, and then also effectiveness, so the quality of service that we're providing. And then thirdly, sort of the group talked about how there's a environmental responsibility part that plays into all the costs, and as we go through the graphs, it'll be apparent how that works into things. So what solid waste services is for all municipalities is the collection of the recyclables and waste, the handling and disposal of the waste, the handling and marketing of the recyclables, and then any special programs. So that'd be like taking care of waste paint or oil and things like that. And the way Canmore Systems works is we have a communal bare bin system, so we have 166 communal garbage containers. Those are the brown containers. And we have about 100 recycling containers around town. In any given day, we have 1 to 2 garbage trucks collecting garbage, and they bring everything back to our waste management center, the blue dot in the center. And then from there, everything's transferred and sent off to CAMROS. So that's for the garbage end of it. For the recycling end of it, we have, again, 2 to 3 trucks collecting throughout the day and bringing it back to the waste management center, and things being collected at the recycling depots and then sent out to a few, those are a few of the places things are sent. So nothing stays in the valley. It all gets sent elsewhere. And the service goal that we strive for is to have capacity in any container, anytime, for any resident. So someone should be able to walk up to any container and be able to use it. That's the goal that we're striving for.
So, I'm sorry, what's this map show?
So the brown line is where our garbage goes.
Uh-huh,
The blue lines are where some of our recyclables go.
okay. And do we know where our recyclables go after they've gone to those places?
Some of them we do, some of them we don't. So, for instance, our plastics right now go to Nobleford and they're made into plastic lumber. Our glass is sent to Quesnel, made into sandblasting. Some of the mixed paper goes to Burnaby and Tacoma. Sometimes that's transferred to China, but often lots of it is processed at the plants there as well. Yeah. So it's a mixture.
So, when you say sometimes it goes to China, we don't know?
We don't know. It's the brokers. Where they're going to get the best buck, they're going to sell it there.
And it's not really our business, but I'm curious, the cost efficiency or whatever of the environmental efficiency of sending paper to China. Is that something we should be talking about in our system?
It's by boat. Oh, I see. Stuff is shipped there by boat, and so yeah, the material goes far and wide. North America doesn't have the capacity for all the waste paper that is produced in North America, so that's the other crux of it, is that we can't process it all here.
Yeah. So the fact that it's being transferred or shipped by sea suggests that the overall cost per ton, environmental cost per ton, is low.
Could potentially be low because you can get so many shipping cans on those.
I guess similar in a way to bringing, I don't know, stone sculpture over from China to Canmore.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks.
So there's 10 benchmarking measures, so same as wastewater. I won't read through them, but we'll take a look at the graphs for each of those. So the first one we're looking at is the total costs. So this is total costs of a solid waste system to operate. So that includes all the collections, which are grouped together. So the blue line is recyclables and garbage collections. The green line is the handling and marketing of recyclables. And then the orange is handling and disposal of garbage. The average is about $265 a ton, and you see we're overachievers. We're on the high end. You'll see that through all the graphs. Canmore is on the high end for costs on most things. It's fairly similar in line with Banff, who has a very similar system to us. And so this is where the environmental consideration comes in, is that you'll see in later graphs as well, but both Canmore and Banff have an animal-proof system to address a wildlife issue, which is environmental, and so that increases costs. And you'll see later on, the better diversion rates that people have, the more programs they have, usually the higher the cost is of the waste system.
So as I was reading through the report and looking at all the graphs, that fact pretty quickly dawned on me that we're on the high end on pretty much every chart. So going back through the information and thinking about it more, it's clear that that's that there's a higher cost of being more environmentally aggressive and also living in the mountainous region and wanting to protect the wildlife. So there's a cost associated to that, which is very clearly reflected in the data.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you'll see sort of in 2014, or through the years, we're taking a sharp increase, and through this period is when the enhanced recycling programs came out. So we had increased bins, the beyond curbside bins throughout the community, and our new waste management center.
Yeah.
So hopefully going into 15, 16, we'll see those costs level out as we had this big jump to get there, and then hopefully we'll level out in the future.
So I was wondering or thinking, in a way, we're outside of this benchmarking study. We can't compare directly to the other communities in this particular study in a very direct way, because we're doing something very different. And while that's made, while that information is in the report, it's not clear. If people just pick up the report and look at it, it's like, holy cow, look at that, Canmore's way off the deep end. But so it's, I remember the discussion earlier about how difficult it was to create the benchmarking for all of the communities because we all do things differently. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, underscores that constraint in the benchmarking like this. We do, and Banff is on most every chart pretty much the same place as we are. So, I mean, the benchmarking is great, but one of the things that's very clear is in the mountain communities, there's a higher cost of providing this service for the reasons.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that the discussions were, that every community provides different services, a different level of services, and they provide the services differently. And so it was really difficult to compare. I think what we'll get out of this is a good comparison for ourselves again, year over year, to how we're performing.
Yeah, but learning to live with wildlife in the Bow Valley, that's a key priority for our community, and I hope people recognize that this is one of the costs. The press just went off the camera. Okay, sorry.
No worries. So the next graph is the same numbers, but just broken out into amortization costs, overhead, indirect, and direct costs. And so one thing of note in this one is that Canmore and Banff, again, the big part that we attract is overhead. And we tried to figure out why our two communities have overhead, and it was the way they calculate that number in finance is by FTEs, so how many employees you have. So both our communities run 7 days a week, where everyone else has collection Monday to Friday. And that made us attract a lot more overhead cost to our costs.
Again, it's because of the system we choose.
Because of the system, we have to keep the bins empty and have capacity. And then we looked at collection costs, and really the same stories there, is that collecting and keeping those bins empty 7 days a week is an expensive endeavor. It's reflected with Canmore and Banff, it is the same. Recyclables, handling and marketing. This graph is kind of all over the place. But the lessons learned out of this one was that when you put new systems on or increase your programs, your costs are going to increase. So if you look at Okotoks in 2014, the last column there, they added curbside recycling carts, and so their costs all of a sudden are going to increase substantially. And then again, you see our trend up towards as we got our beyond curbside and waste management center going. One other thing that was noted also is that the bigger the community, the more volume of material you have, the less it costs to process that material. So the larger municipalities, so Lethbridge and Red Deer, it costs less per ton to process the material.
So what happened with Okotoks?
They, in 2014, before that they just had recycling depots. In 2014, they got curbside recycling pickup.
Door to door.
Door to door, exactly. And then handling and disposal. The biggest impact on this graph was your distance to the landfill. So Airdrie, Canmore, and Banff, we don't have a municipal or a regional landfill we use. Airdrie ships to Calgary, and then Canmore and Banff ship to Camrose. All the other 4 municipalities ship to a local landfill. So most of them, I think they actually own and run themselves. So there's definitely a cost savings there. And the next 2 graphs, we wanted to take a look at sort of doing whether it was more efficient or more cost effective to do the services in-house or to do them contracted. And really the only thing we got out of it was that if you do it in-house, you spend a lot of money on labor. And if you do it contracted, you spend a lot of money on contracted services. So it didn't really tell us anything. But other than that groundbreaking, yeah. And the reason being is that all the municipalities have some portions of contract, and they all negotiate their contracts differently. So, for example, Red Deer has a fairly low cost overall, but they negotiate their contract for the whole city, including commercial. So their contract includes everything, where other ones are just pieces of it. And then these are the amortization costs. So obviously Red Deer has they contract out everything completely, so they actually have no assets. So whereas Canmore, again, more on the high side, and we have lots of infrastructure. Our actual collection infrastructure is very costly. So a set of garbage and recycling bins with a pad and enclosure is $25,000. So to have about 150 of those around town, that's an investment, and then plus our new waste management center. This is our good news story part, and the environmental part. So you'll see the green and blue lines are how much waste and recycling is collected. The blue line is recycling, the green line is waste. And then the yellow line are our diversion rates. So you'll see Canmore is sort of in top 3 for diversion rates, and Airdrie and Banff are there as well. And Banff and Canmore have the higher costs there. Overall, we're kind of average on the waste that we collect combined, and it doesn't seem to make a difference on what the municipalities do for diversion goals, official diversion goals, or bag limits. So a few of the communities actually have bag limits, but like I think Red Deer, but their diversion rates are low. Banff doesn't actually have official diversion goals, but their diversion rates are high. So that this sort of was telling us that it's more just the habits of the residents that really predict how this is going to turn out. And then this one was curbside collection accuracy, which had nothing to do with us. So put it in there. Then the conclusions mainly are it's difficult to compare because we all do things completely differently. Some municipalities don't have recycling collection, some do, some have compost, some don't, some contract, some do it in-house. So it's really difficult to compare the numbers. We are at the top of the costs, but we do have the 2 environmental considerations. We're looking out for the wildlife, and we do have high diversion rates. And in the end, the one thing that this report does tell us is that the most cost-effective solution for anybody would just be to throw it all in the landfill. But again, that's not the right thing for anybody to do. Does anyone have any questions?
Just another observation, I'm looking at the small chart on the page 16 of the solid waste report, page 97 of the council agenda. It's just the graph showing the cost decreasing as density increases. And again, it's sort of Canmore specific because we're not a very dense community. We're spread out a long ways. That's would be another example or another part of the answer as to why our costs are reflected to be higher than other communities. Just it was an interesting chart to see and understand. I don't know if there's questions from members of council. Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Robbins, for your presentation. I was wondering if there was a statement in here on page 102 regarding the revenue from the commercial waste collection could be used to subsidize residential collection?
So I think that is more referring to the way Red Deer negotiated their contract, is that they contract out the whole city. So whoever collects garbage, there's one company that collects residential and commercial garbage in Red Deer. And so how that company decides to spread out the costs, there's the potential for the commercial collection might be higher. That's why their residential rates are so low, but it's being subsidized by a higher rate. But they were able to that company was able to get everything.
So it was more negotiation of the contract as opposed to an opportunity. Do you think we have an opportunity to do something like that, to do commercial collection?
Would we have? I guess we could.
Yeah.
There's always the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's people that do it in town already for commercial, right?
So it's not really something that offsets if you do it yourself. It's something that offsets if you negotiate a contract in that way.
From this report, it wasn't clear if contracting services was more efficient or more cost effective.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question I had for you is, I think you sort of touched on it earlier, that if you just throw everything into the garbage, it's the cheapest way to dispose of waste. Mm-hmm. Because the cost that I think you referred to was $141 a ton, including tipping and transportation.
Yeah, for disposal.
Right, for disposal. But you don't have to sort anything, right? You just throw it in the garbage and then you send it off to whoever will take it. And at this point in time, we have a fairly good cost on tipping fees, but that could change too, right? Yeah. And then it's more costly to process the recycling because you have to separate the streams and then send them off to all those places that you suggested. We have a lot of residents who'd like to see us do organics. We've seen the cost go up from just distributing our garbage to recycling. Now, if we were to add an organics program, would we have to add a fair amount of dollars to that as well?
Yeah, there would be a cost to the program, definitely. And in the 5-year capital plan, it is in there, and it's an estimate, but there is definitely a cost that would come to it. There would be a reduction in the stuff going to landfill, but be fairly insignificant because it's so cheap to send it to the landfill.
So the offset for that is an increase in cost because we'd have to put in a whole number of infrastructure, processes, storage.
Correct.
I think it would be a fairly complex waste stream to manage too, with our wildlife issues, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's not. I don't think it's a simple formula, right? It's not. You just go there because you think that you'd like to do that. There's a lot of infrastructure and manpower involved in that.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Glad we cleared that up. Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins, your chart 2.6.1 gives us a 141 per ton figure of cost collected. Do we have a 2016 number available or no?
Sorry, for how much it cost us to
Yes.
handle garbage?
You're showing it seems to be a sort of a structured inflation rate, right? Like we're up $18, we're up $13. Are we following a pattern there? I was just curious on the more up-to-date number.
Yeah, sorry, I'm missing what chart we're on.
Okay, let me.
Just so I get it.
It's on page 107 of 172 of our package. It says 2.6.1.
2.6.1.
Garbage handling and disposal data.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
It's like an Excel sheet. not a fancy one like
Oh,
this one.
I see, sorry, the chart.
Yeah.
Okay. So through this, it was just inflation. We had the one contractor. We changed contractors this year, and so that new number will go down slightly.
But we would have to get that at a different
Yeah.
time. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Are there other questions at this time? Seeing none, thanks very much for your presentation, Mr. Robbins. It was equally fascinating as Mr. Camo's. What do we got next? Moving on. Councillor Updates. Moving on to Councillor Updates. Once again, I wasn't able to get my update in time for the printing, but I don't have much to say. I'll just whip through it verbally. So I attended the intermunicipal meeting, other than meetings that other councillors attended or events that they attended. I attended the intermunicipal meeting with the CAO, and predominantly the discussion was around the first response fire agreement, which is coming to council for approval next week, I think. There were a number of members of council at the awards for volunteer excellence. I won't go into that, but it's always a highlight of the year for those of us that do go. It's pretty exciting. There have been a couple of CCH board meetings the last month, and predominantly discussions around the project for the old daycare lands, final planning details, and getting very close to signing a contract, hopefully within the next week, I think. I did attend a networking event, again with the CAO for Rocky Mountain Ventures. There was a good crowd, quite a large crowd actually, and it was a mixture of entrepreneurs, people that are looking to start or grow small businesses in Canmore in various sectors, together with mentors that are prepared to work with and have been working with some of the entrepreneurs, and as well at the networking event were angel investors that are prepared to help with financing. So there was a lot of, there was quite a buzz in the room, and I was keeping my eye on some of the people that I know are on the early stage of entrepreneurship, and they were totally working the room, taking advantage of the networking. So it's pretty interesting to watch. Not that long ago, the CAO and I met with the Minister of Housing, Minister Sigurdsson in Banff, along with the MLA, to discuss the current situation with the Mountain Havens Co-op, and specifically to discuss with the Minister the terms of the provincial grant and the SNIT guidelines. And I left the meeting with the sense that the province is going to be supportive of finding a solution for that issue. Last week I attended the grand reopening of the Eagle's Nest Stony Family Shelter in Morley, which was a really great morning. I'm so glad I went. It was lifting of spirits, and this meeting, or the grand reopening in Morley, was Wednesday morning after our last week's council meeting. In any case, it was pretty impressive to see the people come together. A lot of Stoney Nakoda were there, of course, but a lot of neighbors from other communities like Canmore and Cochrane and Banff and the city. And this family support center, I was interested to learn, had been established in Morley in '98, so some time ago. And it provides shelter, of course, for people that are trying to get away from family violence. Very, very positive spirit in the room, a lot of very positive discussions. It was really a great event. And then recently, I talked briefly about this at the morning meeting, but I spoke to a group of students at the high school. The CAO and I have put together a presentation that we're giving to various community groups just to talk about growth and change in our community and the process by which that occurs, and pointing out the positive effects of the change that's occurred in Canmore over the last 40 years. And again, I gave the slightly longer version of that presentation yesterday to the Seniors Association at their lifelong learning session. Great vibes in that room. And last Friday, I attended the grand opening of the Global Waters Future Cold Water Research Facility to bring the greetings from the town of Canmore to that group. Entertained for quite a while by Vi's guys. Councillor Sanford and a bunch of men with their guitars, playing their little hearts out up on the stage there. So again, it was a good event, a good community event, and it was my pleasure to bring congratulations to the research facility. And that's all I have to report on. Are there any questions on that verbal report or any of the written reports in the agenda package? Councillor Cressert?
Your Worship, I have a question through the chair to admin based on Councillor McCallum's report about the Bow Valley Regional Housing and the increased costs. And I was just wondering if council will have the opportunity to discuss funding sources for those increased costs based on the information that we've been handed out. In the limited time that the requisitions would go up before they go down, I would think that this is an ideal situation to use the tax stabilization fund. And I would very much like to have that discussion either before or in parallel to approving the rates.
There was a question through to administration.
Yep.
So the quick answer is yes, you'll have that opportunity. A bit of a longer response is there hasn't been much time to, with the information known to administration, nor do we have the detail that I understand Mr. Wilson will be bringing in, providing a 5-year projection for municipalities. So it being a short-lived increase is not something I'm completely aware of. However, the draft staff report in for the tax rate setting has already gone into the agenda review, and we did look at some alternatives there for using alternative funding sources, so that will be up for discussion next Tuesday for council when setting tax rates.
Because I know that with the same tax rates, I mean, this information here that's been provided, that was left at the table here for us, and my understanding is that the FFE portion will cause it to spread over a few years, will cause an increase, but then the requisitions go down. And so rather than bumping the rate for our residents for a short period of time only to bring them down, that would seem to fit it completely the bill of the tax stabilization purpose.
We can certainly have that discussion next week.
Yeah, and we can look at the information that was distributed today and
yeah. So if that is something that's brought up, I would just bring it to the administration's attention that it would be helpful to have those numbers on hand as to what impact it would have on the requisition we're being asked to approve if in fact some of that was backed out and we used a different fund for it. Thanks.
I have a question for you, Councillor Krausfeld, around your report from the Transit Service Commission. You note that the April statistics are not distributed, but in March, local transit reached 7,291 riders, which sounds to me like a good number. Is that on target for the planning period of when we were planning it? Well, there must have been some sort of target ridership that we had hoped to see.
Yeah, according to our budget approval here at the town of Canmore, we needed to have, I believe it was 110,000 riders over the course of the year. That averages out to less than 10,000 per per month. And of course, you're going to have a ramping up to that. So we're definitely on the right track. I'm just pulling up the agenda package that was just sent around, and I can't put my finger on it right now, but yeah, no, it seems to be tracking the right way. But with transit, you need to take a look at it over a period of time, and even a few months is too short of a window.
Mm-hmm.
In transit, they make a lot of the decisions based on year or multiple years in order to see trends.
Yeah, it's more, people ask me how it's going with the transit, and I say, well, gee, it looks like it's being well used. I ride it myself from time to time, and there's always people on it, and whenever I'm driving around, I see people at the bus stop and yada yada, so I just wasn't too sure if there was hard data that I could refer to, and now there is, and I would agree with you. It seems to be tracking well for the target for the annual ridership.
Yeah, I would add, I'm just seeing it now, there was a dip in April, but they're attributing that to the spring break. Yeah, and it goes to show that if that's the case, a lot of the riders are very well could be younger or families and that sort of thing. So.
Interesting. Are there any other questions for other members of council? Seeing none, move on to service area reports. Any questions related to the reports from CAO's office? Dr. Caudle.
I was just going to remind you that we were going to have a bit of a brief discussion or presentation from Mr. Burt during this section. So when you get to protected services, could you please call on him?
Okay. Okay.
Sounds like a good opportunity for my ECC team to put their vests on and stand up and have a quick stretch.
Great. I'm disappointed we didn't get any. Really?
Part of the team.
Deputy ECC Director. Holy cow. And the director. Look at
it's a fashion show. That's your emergency.
Hold on. The fella in the yellow, the fella in the yellow, does that guy in the yellow have a job? Or what's his? The fun.
He gets the bright sunny color. Does it say something on the back of his jacket?
And that's it? You're just going to stand there? And
I'm too sexy for this vest. I sure hope the microphone is off for that.
Well, wasn't that a fun little interlude, kids? Okay, sorry, go on, Mr. Burt. There you go.
I just wanted to remind council that is the Emergency Preparedness Week this week, so running from May 7th to 13th, hence myself and fashion models beside me. So I'll be brief. I know we're tight on time. We put out information on our website. Alberta Emergency Management Agency puts information out, as does the Government of Canada on getprepared.gc.ca. So they've got a lot of great information on there. Just a few key messages for yourselves, for members of our ECC team, for the media, members of the public. Key messages coming out, which we fully agree with, are knowing the risks in the community. So we know fire, flood, train derailment, mass casualty, etc. Be familiar with the risks within the community. Make a plan for yourself. So take an opportunity to go home if you haven't done so already. Develop a plan. Where are you going to meet? Who are you going to contact? Everything within making that plan, and then getting the kit. So I can't stress this one enough. This is one of our sample kits that we drag around with us. So without going through everything, the emergency reference guide, AMA information. If you have 10 minutes to get out of your home, do you have all of your important documents ready? So do you have your credit cards? Do you have your will? Do you have, what else have we located in here? Do you have some cash? Because you might not be going to the ATM.
Is there cash in there?
Do you have some socks and underwear? If you recall in 2013 when we were sitting in this exact location for quite a while, I remember looking at Ms. DeSoto saying, I think I might need to go shopping because I can't wear my underwear much longer. Do you have a life straw to
Not
drink
even going to go there.
water? Have you got some toilet paper? Have you got batteries, etc.? Do you have an extra battery for your cell phone charger? We want to be able to push information out to you about evacuation alerts, where to go to a reception center. How we do that is we push it out through the local media, through the paper, through the radio, through the paper, the Alberta Emergency Alert. So do you have Alberta Emergency Alert app on your phone? That's another way that we push information out. So 3 key points: know the risks, make a plan, get a kit. If you need more information, go to canmore.ca, go to getprepared.gc.ca, and public alerting and information. I know everyone in this room follows the town of Canmore on Facebook, on Twitter. We're pushing information out there. And have you downloaded the Alberta Emergency Alert app on your phone? And you can subscribe to just Alberta Emergency Alerts in this location, so you're not getting them throughout the province. And I know everybody's aware of everything that's going on throughout the country with flooding. Definitely hits home for me. We are participating in a mock emergency exercise with the town of Banff tomorrow, so you'll see some media coming out about that. Robin Denage is going to be participating in the ECC. I'm likely going to be teamed up with our Alberta Emergency Management Agency field officer. We're sending a team of 6 to 8 firefighters with our instant command post and trailer. If you'd walked by the fire hall last Wednesday night during training practice, I was there along with the team setting up our tents, our emergency trailer. So that's what we're deploying to provide some assistance. Recognize if we have a big event, we're going to rely on each other. So yeah, just some key tips for you. Thanks for affording me the opportunity to come in and show you my toilet paper in my bag.
It's all good.
If you haven't done it, take a few minutes when you get home tonight to go through some of this stuff. Again, 3 o'clock in the morning, we don't have much time. It's pretty important you've got one of these bags sitting there ready to go.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll take my vest.
Councillor Sanford?
Oh.
Thank you. I just had a question about, it's one thing to be evacuated, but it's another thing to know where to be to help. Because one of the things that's happening out in the east right now is that, people are trying to help other people, but what is the actual mechanism for providing that help? Like sandbagging, for instance, people are showing up to places saying, I can help, but where do I go?
Yeah, that's boy, since 2013, and every debrief or every conference or any training session I participated in, one of the biggest challenges for emergency managers is how to deal with volunteers and spontaneous volunteers. So there are a bunch of rough mechanisms in place as to how to address those, but really it's about us identifying areas of need where we need people, ensuring that there's appropriate PPE and training for those people, and utilizing them where needed. And we need to balance the need for people to volunteer and help versus it becoming a risk and a liability for the municipality as well, because they essentially become our volunteers at that point. So again, we need to ensure we're not putting them at risk, and every situation is different and unique. And I would say it is an area for development in all emergency managers' portfolios to try and completely sort that out and figure that out. But you raise a very valid point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take my backpack unless there's no other questions.
Okay.
I'm going to grab my vests.
Yeah. Don't forget to get that yellow one back. Okay, jump in with it when we get there. Okay, so moving on, go ahead and ask him now.
Where are we at with our summer bylaw crew? When are we expected to bring them on?
Posting closed, I believe, last week. Looking to conduct interviews soon. I can
Being on
confirm a date
weekend,
for
June
you.
1st?
Yeah, likely in June 1st. We did make a decision to just go with one officer this year because the time limit parking didn't extend beyond the existing lots. And that's what I'd shared with council during the budget presentations, was that if that didn't extend, it wouldn't be a cost neutral position, but absolutely we're looking at one position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, Mr. Burt. I'll open the floor for any questions in any area. Councillor Seeley, you have a question?
Yeah, for Dr. Cottle, just I noticed a request for an in-street patio for the Range Restaurant is being looked at right now. And some of the feedback that I've received is the Mountain Market is actually impacting their business. And just wondering if the location of the Mountain Market, right where it's right in front of the business, has been considered to, can we make some adjustments?
For this year, no. The market starts in 2 weeks. We hear from a lot of businesses in town that the Mountain Market, we hear from restaurants that Mountain Market affects their lunch. We ask them to give that feedback to the BRZ. Then the BRZ actually works with us on the planning and organizing and selection of the market. So what we don't want to do is get into a circumstance where every restaurant is coming to us. We want them to go through the BRZ. So we have asked the owners of the range to do that. In order to get to this agreement, and we do have an agreement in place, they will have a patio. It will be available during the market. And what we've agreed to do is not put food vendors directly in front of them and encourage them. They actually have a great opportunity to incorporate into the market. And so we're hoping that they will be creative and advertise and utilize the market and encourage more business instead of just suggesting that we don't put the market there. So that's what we're going to trial for this year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Speaking about in-street patios, can you tell me, do you know how many there will be this summer? How many licenses we've issued? Mr. Fark?
I do not know that number, but I can get that for you and get back to you.
Okay. It seems to be, well, talked with a number of businesses that are putting their patios back, and I know the Grays is putting, or not Grays, the one we just talked about. The Range is putting one out. So it appears that there's going to be a good number this year. Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Worship. In the recreation services area, item B, in number 2, we're partnering with the CCHS to provide programming in CCHS. Are we paying is there a cost associated with this, or are we just manpower, or how's this working, please?
Who would like to take that?
Could you restate that, Councillor Russell?
Thank you. Area 2, recreation services, item B, partnership with recreation services and CCHS will provide an after-school drop-in program in the CCHS gymnasium. Is there a cost involved with this to the town, and is the CCHS paying the bill for this, or are we donating?
Yep, no, great question. So it's a new program, so we don't know yet. What we're doing is having an open gym on Wednesdays. So the first one actually is tomorrow. It's right after school till 5 o'clock. CCHS is providing the gym, and the town is providing a staff person just to be there and manage equipment and kids. All the kids who drop in need to pay a $5, there's a drop-in fee. So the idea is it's cost neutral. If it turns out that we don't have enough kids to recover all the costs, then the program won't go. So it will have to be cost neutral. If we don't have enough uptake, then we won't continue with the program.
Thank you.
Any other questions on any of the service area reports? Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Your Worship. Under engineering services, there's a parking study going on. And I'm just wondering if how we're going to incorporate the in-street patios pop up during the summer into that parking study, since we're giving up some parking spaces. I'm not sure how you manage the in-street patio with the parking study?
So the permitting and permission for the in-street patios, the impact of that on parking was taken into consideration when the patio program was proposed. We have a firm count on the number of stalls that will be impacted, and planning is currently getting me the number of patios, so I should have that information for you shortly. And in the big scheme of things, the 12 to 15 stalls that may be limited or reduced due to the patios is not material in the total number of parking stalls we have in the downtown, which numbers, I believe it's close to 1,000 currently. So it is not, the presence of the patios is not expected to have a material impact on the parking study.
Okay, thank you. Just above that, there's also a suggestion that the Eklof Park is going to have some trees and picnic benches and things in there. So that park is going to be more used. Is that correct? Because we're putting some furniture in there?
So do you know where Eklof Park is?
I sure do.
Yeah. Eklof Park is the small park off Fairholme Drive. And there's a couple of dead trees there, I understand it, that will come out. And so there'll be some additional trees installed.
Boy, you must have been just listening right in.
Yeah. I don't know if there's more to add, but we can let Mr.
Apparently
Fish.
there is. The manager of plans
Apparently.
just popped his head in.
I want that blue vest, Sally. Yes, there are 2 dead trees in sort of the center. There's a unusual little divot in that area. And so the idea is to remove those and to plant some new trees and hopefully add at least 1 picnic bench this year. There's often families in that area, and we don't have many picnic opportunities right downtown. So that's the plan with that.
And are we still going to continue to use some of that parking area for RV parking that we had done in the past for special events? I mean, is there some extra parking being planned in that area? Because I know people were parking big vehicles down there.
So there is no additional parking planned over what has traditionally been provided.
Okay.
Yeah, parking is encouraged and possible on Fairmont Drive, but we're not providing the additional parking over, again, what has traditionally been provided.
Just as a reminder, what we are doing when we permit our parks is asking people who are having weddings to have an alternative transportation plan and requiring that they not have 50 vehicles going to their wedding, that they have a different way to get guests there. So we are trying to manage it in that kind of way.
So Eklof Park's going to be a permitted park?
Well, if you want to book a wedding there and you come to the town, we would issue a permit for it. It's not, you could just go and have a picnic there, but if you come, what I'm saying is if you ask for a permitted event, that would be one of our conditions.
Okay, so that will be part of the permitted park.
And I would further add that we have 5 applications for patios so far in the system for this year.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll have another park. That'll be nice.
Are there any other questions at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the council resolution action list. Any questions regarding that? Seeing none, moving on then to board and committee updates. Any questions, comments there? Councillor McCallum?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't really have anything additional to add. I have dropped off a little sheet as well to the press as to admin to give some more rounded explanation as to what kind of goings on are happening in senior land. But Mr. Wilson will be booking with all the municipalities to do a roadshow now that we've had our final bit of funding announced for phase 2. So we should expect to see him in the coming months. The graphs that have been supplied give us an idea as to what the requisitions would have been without the grant funding and what the requisitions will be with the grant funding. and how the capital requisition will smooth out over time and what it will look over until 2025. So if you have any additional questions, you can either email them to me, or I'm assuming that finance is in conversation with Mr. Wilson. But I wanted to make sure I could provide some clarity to everybody around the table and at the press and at administration before the mill rate bylaw comes forward
Thank you.
next week.
Councillor Crowser.
Your Worship, I just wanted to ask for confirmation from Councillor McCallum that with these graphs, that's the total requisition, correct?
Yeah.
Before the grant and then after the grant. So the one that the situation we're in is the lower graph.
Yes.
That's the total requisition, and then Canmore's portion is 58% of that.
Yes.
Right, so it's
Yes.
not that total
This
amount.
is the total, requisition to all 5-member municipalities. That's what this is reflective of. And then in the text on page 2, when requisitions level off, it notes that $400,000 would be the Canmore portion of a $700,000 requisition by 2021, which is down from, did we say
1.25.
Yeah, I'm just
so
thinking of the
7,
Canmore
yeah,
requisition,
yeah,
7 something, I had it in my report.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be 70.
Sorry, I'm in the staff report. Councillor Comfort. God, we type a lot. Yeah, it's like 7:30, sorry. Unfortunately, my iPad's not, oh, here we go, thank you. 727,200 was the 2016 number. And then the 2017 number is 742,600 for the lodge operating deficit. That's what we currently, is the actual lodge operating deficit outside of the capital funding piece.
Great, thanks very much. Unless there's further discussion on that item, I'll take a short break and then we'll come back and go in camera.